Well, Jesse felt pretty good. He was waking up. Jesse was a good man, a good businessman. He had not a lot of land, but he had enough acreage to take care of some of his flocks. Actually, Jesse had a lot of sheep. He also had a pretty big family. He had 8 kids altogether. As he got up and made his coffee, he was a pretty good business worker, and he had taught his sons to be pretty good business people as well. Take care of the land, do your job, go to your career, whatever it is that you needed to do. So as he got up and started to stretch, put his clothes on, washed himself off, made some coffee, took it out to the porch and sat down in his rocking chair, looked over the grass and kind of enjoyed where he was, liking the sun, but there was something wasn't quite right. He couldn't figure out what it was. All his sons seemed to be in the right place. They were gone and around somewhere. They were supposed to be very busy. And yet, there was something wrong, but he didn't know what it was. He turned and he called to his youngest son, who happened to be out tending the sheep and taking care of all of them, which is what he normally did. And his son came in and said, "Dad, you call me?" Jesse said, "Yes, I did, son. I want you to get some food together. I want you to take some cheese and some bread and some lunch meat, and I want you to take it out to your 3 brothers who are in the army and give them lunch," which was the normal understanding of how you end up passing through a couple days. So his son went in and got the lunch meat and got the bread and got the cheese. And then Jesse said, "By the way, get some extra for some of the guys that are working with him so that they get a little treat as well." So he agreed. He got the lunch together, put it all on his back, put it first into his satchel, and then on his back he headed out, taking a walk to where the war was going on, which was quite a walk. It would take a couple hours. Took his time, humming as he usually did, and taking it easy. Now, his youngest son, who was now carrying this lunch to his brothers, was one of Jesse's favorite. Jesse loved him. He was kind. He did his work. He wasn't the kind of guy you had to follow after. Some of his sons you had to follow after and say, "Hey, get the work done." Or, "Hey, you missed this. You got to come over here and clean this up like you said you were gonna." But not this guy. This guy took care of his duties. And Jesse never needed to follow him up because he was always doing what he was supposed to do. He had a list, and he made sure it worked. Now, when Jesse had seen to it that all his sons were busy and working, this young guy would take care of the sheep, and while taking care of the sheep, had his favorite and walked around, petted a few of them, made sure a few were fed, made sure they were safe, and then he'd sit down and he'd write. He would write songs mostly. He loved to sing. He was a good-looking kid, and he had a great voice. He often would play the harp, or what was back then sort of a guitar. But by himself, as he allowed the time to go by, and as he had to figure out how to keep from being bored, he would write songs. He was a great poet, and then he would sing. And some of those songs he would put to memory, and he'd write them down so that he'd always have them. Now, this poem that he had written would be hard to believe that he would think 3,000 years ago was being repeated in the Foundation Academy to some of the students. Would he know about that? No, of course not. He wouldn't even know that there was a Foundation Academy. But having sat down and written this poem, somehow God knew that in April, what's the date today? That's why Mom didn't get a present. May 11th, isn't it? 11th? May 11th, 2015, God knew that his poem would be spoken. And here it is. Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He maketh me to lie down in green pastures. He leads me beside the still waters. He restores my soul. He leads me in the paths of righteousness for his name's sake. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil. For thou art with me. Thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. Thou preparest a table before me in the presence of mine enemies. Thou anointest my head with oil. My cup runneth over. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever. Just a little poem. I don't know how long it took for him to have to write it, but it lasted for years, years and years, 3,000 years, and somehow comes to my heart, warms me every day. I understand it. Some of you who would get out of your own selfish thinking and look at other lives, perhaps look at the poem and understand that maybe the Lord is my shepherd. To understand the words, the meaning of a God that is there looking down on you and taking care of you. He wouldn't know that I was reading the poem, and little would he understand that 3,000 years later, somebody was still reading that poem. And right now, in the entire world, there are churches and people that are memorizing and memorializing that poem. But little David didn't understand all of that. David didn't understand that he was about to be a king. And yet he writes, thou anointest my head with oil. Now how he knew it, I don't know. But that's how you name the king. That was the understanding of how a king would come to Israel. And to David, he was about to be anointed. David knew in his heart he was going to be a king. Now we're only talking about a 15-year-old boy. Now we may not be talking about that. Scholars say that he might have just been 13. It may be that he was older than 16, but I don't think so, because it doesn't fit the scenario. About 15 is probably how old he was. He's just thinking about getting on his own, becoming independent. He's just barely understanding his responsibilities, and he has a great love for God and a great love for music. So he sings, and he plays, and he writes, and then he does whatever his father wants him to do. And Jesse said, please, bring your brothers lunch, and give me a report as to how they're doing, because I don't feel right. I don't think everything's going okay. So David says, I will. And he does. Takes a 2-hour walk, strolls here and there, chases after a squirrel, pets a stray dog, sees a horse that comes over to nibble, but won't give him anything to eat. And then finally, he gets to the War Valley. Now, as he sees the War Valley far off, he notices there's no activity in the valley itself. Let me explain this valley to you. The valley is where you enter into Israel. Now, Israel is not a very big city. In fact, it is a mile square. Consider that. A mile square. The wall goes around Israel. A mile. And yet, Israel is the most famed of the nations. And now, Israel has gone to their area of war just outside the city. Let me explain the area to you. There is a valley in the middle. When the Israelites come to the area, they can climb up mountains, they can look over the mountain, and they can see who's coming into the valley. On the other side, there are 2 latrines. And on these 2 latrines come some people from the west, some people from the east, to attack Israel if they decide to do. Now, just for your information, that description that I've just given you as to what's happening there is happening today. It's still the same. Still the same war. There are still people attacking Israel, and someday you need to take time to study that and get to understand what's going on in this day and age. But back then, David, as he got closer, could see that the men were behind the mountains and there was nobody in the valley. Now, where the valley was, the men could convene. The enemy would be here. Israel would be here. They would run down to fight each other. They would fight each other for a while. Then they would turn around and retreat. That was the idea of the way the valley was shaped. And it was a good idea. But nobody was down there. Nothing was happening. So David came up and climbed towards the mountain, and he saw one of his brothers. So he went over there, and he came up and said, "Hi, bro, what's happening?" And his brother said, "Sit down, get down." What? You want to get your head knocked off? What do you mean? They're threatening us. They're trying to take us over. Who? Philistines. That's why they called them Philistines, because they were against Israel. And Philistines were terrorists. Philistines were the kind of people that would take over your house. If the Philistines came into your city, they'd go into your city, and they'd go into your house. They would take what you own. They would wreck what you've got. They would rape your women, and they would hurt your children. And they'd make sure they did it good. If anybody was left alive, you would join the army. That's the way the Philistines were, and that's why they were called Philistines. They didn't have a god that took care of them. They did worship gods of mythology, but no gods that mean anything to them. So David looks at his brother and says, "What's the matter with you?" "I'm telling you, they're on the other side of that mountain, and they're going to come and attack us." While the two brothers are fighting, suddenly a man comes out to the bottom of the valley. And David looks at a man like he's never seen before, 10 foot tall. And the man comes down dressed like a tank, carrying a stave that is a tree trunk, carrying another sword, wearing a sword that is bigger than David himself, armor that cannot be penetrated by anybody or any weapon. And he comes down and stands there very defiantly and says, "I defy you and the stupid God you believe in. I dare you to come to me. Now I accept the challenge of one man you name as a champion. He can come down to this valley and he can try to fight me. And I will kill him. And then I will take over your land. Now send him down here and let's fight." David says, "My goodness. Who's going to go?" Brother says, "Will you shut up? Listen to what he's saying." David said, "The guy just challenged us. What are we going to do? He just insulted our God." "David, would you please shut up? We're in the middle of a battle here. Go back to your place. Go take care of your sheep. We've got stuff to do here. Our lives are at stake. Your house and my father's house is at stake." Well, who's going to challenge him? Who's going to fight him? Well, we thought King Saul was, because he's the biggest of us. That's why we named him king. But he's never come out of his tent. Well, how long has this been happening? 40 days, 40 nights. He comes out once a day, says the same thing. Says our God is stupid. He defies him, and he's waiting for us to fight him. And anyone who wins the battle. It's just that simple. If he wins, he gets all of Israel. If we win, they leave. Well, that sounds simple enough to me. So go out and fight him. "Oh, yeah. Easy for you to say, shepherd boy. Get back to your sheep and leave us alone." I'm not kidding. Get out there and fight him. Go back to your sheep and leave us alone. Tell your father not to send you anymore. I know where I'm going. David stands up, goes right up to Saul's tent. Right into Saul's tent, right into the king's tent. He's not waiting for anybody to talk to him and give him permission. He walks in there and he sits and says, "Sir, can I talk to you?" Now Saul knows David a little bit because Saul has listened to David sing. And Saul loves listening to David sing and play. So he's willing to talk to him and says, "Well, I know you, son. What do you want?" "Saul, king, sir, I'd very much like to go out there and fight Goliath." What did you say? "I'd like to go out and fight Goliath." Did I hear what you said? "I want to go out there and fight Goliath." "David, go home. Thank you for coming. We're scared to death of Goliath. We don't know what's going to happen. And if we don't fight and win, we lose our country. I know. So let me go. I can't let you go out there and fight him. You're not even you're hardly 15 yet. And you can't do any of that stuff, and you're not a warrior, and you don't have any armor. He's defied our God, King. He has gone against our God. He says that our God is stupid. The God that established us, he has defied. Look, I may look a little weak to you, but the fact of the matter is, I'm much stronger than you think. I was guarding these sheep one day, and a bear came out, attacked him. I attacked the bear and killed him with my bare hands. Are you telling the truth? Let me tell you something else. 3 lions came out attacking my sheep. I killed them. I tore their jaws apart. You're telling me stories. No, I'm telling you. I have killed bears with my bare hands. I've killed lions with my bare hands. But God has taken care of me. God has guided me and been with me every time I've done it. And God will be with me when I go out there and attack this guy. David, we're fighting a war. We don't have time to listen to you. Let me go. Are you going to go? No, I'm not going. You got somebody else that'll go? No. Somebody was listening to the conversation, comes in and says, King Saul, if he says he'll go, let him go. We won't go out there. We're going to die. If he says he's going to go, let him go. But he's going to die. They'll kill him. He says he'll go. At least it'll hold him off for a little while. Well, after a little talk, King Saul says, okay, I'll tell you what. I've got the best armor. I'm the biggest guy. Take my sword, David. We're going to let you go out there. David grabs the sword. It starts to whinger, and it falls. He says, put my helmet on. He puts the helmet on. David falls down. He can't get up. Saul says, put my armor on. He puts the armor on. David can't move. He can't move. Saul, I can't move in this stuff. I can't use this. I can't fight anybody. I can't move. Well, it's the only armor I've got. It's the best armor that we've got. I don't need armor. I need the love of God, and I need faith in God, and I need the chance to use my slingshot. I'm a very good slingshotter. Saul says, this is not my day. I should have stayed in bed. I don't understand this. I got a kid here, 15 years old, that isn't even in my army, and he's going to go out there and fight this giant that we've all seen. And so David goes out. Evidently, it's a very pretty valley because there's a brook that is running by Saul's tent. And David stays at the brook, puts his hands in the water, and looks around, picking up 5 smooth stones. Now, you can't pick up rugged stones. You can pick them up, but you can't aim ragged stones real good. So he's got to find 5 good, solid, heavy stones that he can use. Why 5 of them? Because Goliath had 4 brothers. So one by one, David finds a stone and puts it in his sack until he's got 5 stones ready to go. And then he says, okay, let's go. Saul says, don't say let's go. I'm not going anywhere. I'm staying right here. I'm not going to watch this mess. I can't imagine what's going to happen. Somebody's going to come yelling at me because I let you die. And that's what's going to happen. You're going to get killed. So David walks by King Saul, starts walking down to the valley. Goliath. Somebody's coming down on the other end. Finally, after 40 days and 40 nights, somebody's finally coming out to accept my challenge? Well, it's about time. So Goliath quickly puts on his armor, puts on his sword, sticks his sword in the back where he carries it in the sheath so that he can grab it and send it out and slash anybody he wants to. Grabs his small shield that he carries, grabs his stave, the tree trunk that he holds in his hand, puts on his boots and the armor that can't be penetrated, and then even before Goliath goes anywhere, he's got hired a young man that carries his shield for him in front of him. What a job that is. Because it's too big for one man to carry, except for Goliath, who will have to worry about his shield when they get down to the warfare. So the young man dutifully picks up that big shield and starts walking down towards the valley, while Goliath is looking at the stave and waiting to pull that sword out of his back and kill this new guy. Wait a minute. This isn't a warrior. This guy doesn't have any armor on. What is this? This is a kid. This is a kid. How dare they do that? Send a kid to me. What's going on here? They get down to where they're ready. And David takes a pretty firm stand. I don't know what kind of stand a 15-year-old that's never been to war will take, but he took one. And he's standing there defiantly. And Goliath says, "Who are you?" David says, "I'm the champion. I'm here to beat you. I'm going to kill you." Goliath says, "I'm sick of this. I'm going to show Israel what it's like. I'm going to show them what their fun and their joke is like. Young man, you are defying me and the army of Philistines. I'm going to come at you with everything I've got. I'm going to tear you apart. I'm going to show you what it's like to serve that silly God you don't believe in, that doesn't exist anywhere, and I'm going to make you a real picture of what it's like to be massacred, and then we will come in and we will destroy your houses and destroy your family." What do you got to say to that, kid? David says, "You're coming to me with your stave, with your shield, and with your sword. I'm standing in front of you in the power of the God Almighty that made me and made you. And that God is going to guide me right to you, and I'm going to kill you and cut off your head, and I'm going to hold it up for everybody to cheer, for our entire nation to be grateful for exactly what has happened here." I don't believe I'm hearing this from this stupid kid. I'm going to take care of him right now. And so you can hear as Goliath starts running towards him. He's going to kill him. He's going to kill him. Now, if I was David, I'd turn around and I'd be out that door as quick as I could be. But David looks right in the eyes of Goliath, and the Bible says, began to run towards him. David is running towards him, puts the sling over his shoulder, puts the rock into his slingshot, and starts swinging it around. It's a long sling that he lets go eventually when it's time, and bam! Right on the forehead of Goliath. Bible tells of a boy named David, played the harp and loved to sing. Saved his sheep from the bear and lion. Brave little boy and shepherd king. Philistines came into Judah always looking for a fight. Said their champion called Goliath couldn't be beat by an Israelite. Nobody dares to fight Goliath, fight a giant 10 feet tall. Bigger they are, said little David. That much harder they're bound to fall. He tried a helmet, it was heavy. He tried a sword and it was long. Give me a slingshot, said little David. These contraptions fit me wrong. Goliath laughed to see him coming. He looked so frail, he looked so small. But when that pebble hit his forehead, you should have heard that giant fall. So what kind of Goliaths do you face? Oh, we don't face Goliaths here. We don't have any giants to worry about. Some of you think that. Oh, you're such fools. You are such idiots. You don't take time to examine what's around you. Right now, the giant of God is the devil, who is anxious to see to it that every one of you will go to hell. And he'll do everything he can to make sure he does. And he's convinced you, to some of you, that it's okay for you to lie. It's okay for you to steal. It's okay for you to doubt the Bible. It's okay for you not to have any responsibility to the God that made you or that woke you up today so that you'd be in this building. You don't even understand that surrounded by you is angels that have kept those giants away from you. And those giants are waiting around the corner to grab you. And you know what? The giant has already conquered some of you. Some of you are used to lying. Some of you are used to laughing at God. Some of you are used to spitting at whatever takes place that's good. Some of you are used to breaking the commandments. Some of you are used to saying, there's no good in the Bible. You know, the American Bible Association, 1949, offered to anyone that would show a contradiction of the Bible that they could immediately receive $1,000. Today, that challenge is up to $5,000. If you can find a contradiction in the Bible and prove it to the American Bible Association, they will give you on the spot $5,000. Since 1949, nobody has been able to do it. And you know what? You won't be able to either, because you can't find one. Because you don't take time to look. Because you don't understand what really counts. Because you don't understand the power that has woke you up. You don't understand the power that keeps you alive right now. The minute that Christ forgets you is the minute you dissipate. You are alive and together and you're whole awake because Jesus is thinking about you every second of the day. And as long as Jesus gives you permission to be alive, you're sitting here not by your power, but by his. And as long as Jesus gives you permission to beat your heart beats. And when God says, that's it, you're done. And then you face the judgment, just as it is appointed unto men once to die. And after this, the judgment. Well, if Goliath comes after us, I don't know what to do. Who shall separate us from the love of Christ? Shall tribulation or distress, or persecution or famine, or nakedness or peril or the sword? As it is written, for thy sake we are killed all the day long. We are accounted as sheep to the slaughter. No! In all these things we are more than conquerors through him that loved us. For I am persuaded that neither height, nor depth, nor principalities, nor powers, nor things present, nor things to come, nor height, life, or death shall be able to stand in the way of what Jesus will give me. We are more than conquerors. I am the resurrection and the life, Jesus said. He that believeth in me, though he were dead, yet shall he live. And whosoever liveth and believeth in me shall never die. I can do all things through Christ, who strengthens me. That's what David said. I can do everything for the Lord, Saul. Let me go defeat Goliath. You better start looking at your Goliaths. You better see what it is that's keeping you from God. You better start looking at what it is that you think and how you're acting, and the fact that you're going to be judged for what you do today, and for how you think right now, and for where you are next week, and allowing you're alive 10 years from now, and you'll be answering for every one of those things. And you better understand that your only hope to overcome the problems of the world and to conquer the Goliaths that are fighting you is to give your heart to Jesus and let Jesus be your conqueror. We are more than conquerors through him that loved us. I stand with that stave. I stand with the sword that God gives me. I look up to him and I say, in mighty defiance to the devil and everyone who dares to say that the Bible is not true, and to those who refuse to believe that Jesus is alive, the Lord is my shepherd. I shall not want. Amen. Amen.